Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Patriots coming off that win in Buffalo. They're 2-5, but hopes are high, hearts are full, eyes are pointing upward because it's only going to get better. Is it? Well, we're going to bring in Phil Perry and Mike Kadlick from WEEI to discuss the Patriots' potential this week, focusing on Mac, focusing to a degree on Tua, and also trying to figure out just how they're going to attack the position of wide receiver with Juju Smith-Schuster perhaps being available this week, but Demario Douglas playing real good. Let's hit it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this party started. We have Mike Kadlick from WEEI joining myself and the Senator Phil Perry. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
I am very happy to have a new voice. Mike does an excellent job. You can hear him on WEEI's pregame show. You can hear him during the week, and you can read his stuff on WEEI.com. Before we get to Mac, let me look at these numbers, fellas, from Tua against the Patriots. Never lost to Bill Belichick, which is wild. 5-0, 95 for 138. So he's completing almost 70% of his passes. 7.1 yards per attempt. I'm a big subscriber to that being the best indicator of how good a quarterback plays. And 7.1, Phil, I see a wry smile, whatever. 7.1 is a good, not great number. 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, 9 sacks. They do get to him. Meanwhile, we got Mac, fellas, coming off a performance that may have been his best overall and definitely was his best in the fourth quarter coming down the stretch. And guys are coming out of the woodwork to say, told you, Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, I love Mac's poise. Mac loves to win. Some people, talk about how he looks on the sideline or this or that, but he loves to win. He's a competitor. We get frustrated as players. And that's another mental thing, too. We have to fight against it. And I think he's doing a good job of growing with that every day, of just fighting against the mistakes he makes, because it makes you get out of your game and your element when you make a mistake. It's like, how do you fight? And I think he's doing a great job of just trying to bounce back and sticking to what he knows best, what he's worked to be. And I think that 2-minute drive shows what he really is. And we've really been working on 2-minute as a group. And to do it in the game and finish was huge for us. So I'm proud of that guy, man, and his growth. And I know he's going to be a great player.
All the things that people said Mac Jones wasn't and or couldn't do, he certainly did last week. And a big part of that is, okay, I have guys that I trust. I have guys that I know where are going to be. I have guys that I believe are going to go do something with it. And so I can play a little bit more anticipation-based and ball placement-based and throw guys to open spots.
And that, of course, was our friend Dan Orlovsky on with Jones and Mego on WEEI. Phil, haven't heard from you yet. So can Mac take this on the road and not stab himself in the forehead in South Florida?
First of all, let me just say the only reason I gave you a wry smile at the yards per attempt quip was because that used to be the Jimmy Garoppolo stat. He used to rack up yards per attempt like nobody's business. I look at Mac Jones and I say, is it sustainable down in Miami? I think it can be. And to me, the key is what he has on the offensive line. Now, Trent Brown's been limited in practice this week with a lower body issue. If he's at all limited, Tom, he's been their best offensive lineman this year. I know people like to kill Trent Brown because it doesn't look like he's given full effort, maybe 100% of the time, but he's been their best lineman. And if he's at all banged up, and you still have Cole Strange who's working his way back from injury, Micah Wynn who's at a new position, things could get a little dicey there on the offensive line. They're just dying for a little consistency, a little health up front. They had that on Sunday. They ran the ball better. They could play under center. They could use play action. And what do you know? They play from ahead, and their offense actually looks pretty good. So to me, the key is the offensive line. If the offensive line is right, then Mac Jones can keep it going in Miami.
Give it to me, Kadlick.
Yeah, I'm with Phil. I mean, it's going to come down to that. And I think they finally found that sort of consistent 5 guys that they've wanted all season long. It only took them 8 weeks to finally put Onwenu at right tackle, but it boded well. Obviously, Mac was able to get in rhythm with his receivers. He had some time to throw. He wasn't, jittery back there like we've seen for, the last couple of weeks here. No turnovers from Mac. And so Phil mentioned Trent being banged up. I think him coming back in the game on Sunday after he left was a little bit of a positive sign. And, we all know Trent's had sort of, some ups and downs across his career here. I think in some of his downs, he might not have came back into that game, but I think he seems a little bit more bought in this year, someone who, wants to keep contributing to the team. So if he can, I would expect him to be out there. And again, if they keep on Wenu at tackle, that's gonna keep this train moving forward. So can he do it? I think so, but we haven't really seen it. What we saw on Sunday was, I guess, the first time. So can he do it again is the big question.
It's all dependent.
We'll have to see.
That's the thing. It's all friggin' dependent on other people. And a lot of quarterbacks are like that. And the ones that aren't, sometimes you don't want them either. Say Justin Fields. Well, he can make some plays with his feet. Yep. He can make some really bad plays with his feet and his arms. So you now have 4 appendages that can sabotage your day. The Patriots, too, are going to absolutely key on, aside from the offensive line, it's actually interlinked, can they run the ball? Because they didn't really run it that effectively statistically against the Buffalo Bills, Phil. When you got in under the hood and you did your report card, what did you see about the Patriots running game that led it to be effective, but not explosive? Pregnant pause. Sorry. Just go ahead.
You left me dangling there. They weren't necessarily explosive consistently, but what was interesting about their run game was they did come up with a few, what I would call chunk runs. You did have a 14-yarder in there. You had a couple 10-yarders in there. And some of the stuff that you look at in the box score at the end of the game would indicate, okay, how good were they really? Both Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott under 4 yards per carry. They were 4 yards per carry as a team. You got a 20-yarder in there from Demario Douglas mixed in. How sustainable is that? But I think what was a positive sign for them was that they stuck with it. They played with the lead again for the majority of that game. I think that is a huge dictator in terms of how consistently they can come back to it. That's
especially on the road. To do that on the road. I'm sorry to interject, but it's even more important on the road, Phil, right?
Definitely. Yes. In terms of the crowd noise and you not wanting to be in shotgun empty consistently because you're down 2 scores down in Miami. Like that's the last thing you're looking for. So I'm waiting still, Mike. I don't know about you. I'm still waiting for a game where Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott just take the load and they run for 210 yards combined. And they have 35 minutes in terms of time of possession, and that's how they win a game. They've had important plays here and there. Zeke's short yardage touchdown, Ramondre Stevenson catch and run screen to set him up in the game winner. But they haven't really dominated a game yet. I'm wondering if they could do that, and maybe it's this week.
Yeah, this could be it. I mean, this Miami run defense hasn't been great. They started off, terribly against the Chargers in week 1. They've bounced back a little bit, but this is the game I think to do it. And you're right, talking about, the run game and with like Demario Douglas getting involved too. I sort of look at like the RPO game as an extension of the run game. Even if you can get a quick screen out there, that's, it can be a de facto run. You get some linemen out there, whatever. But you're right. The chunk plays we've seen from Ramondre and Zeke have been great, but to do it consistently can be huge. And I think, on the road, getting this offensive line in a rhythm for a second straight week can be there too. Cause it's one thing to be able to sit back there and pass block, but, to really get, heads downhill, running the ball consistently for, like you said, 200 plus yards could be a huge factor in this game.
I have a nagging discomfort that the Devontae Parker limited usage is going to be a temporary thing. And same with Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to come back. He's going to take snaps from Demario Douglas, and the Patriots are going to say, look, we bought these things. We're going to try and use these things because we can't look at ourselves and say we got it completely wrong. It's not as much about the money as it is about the evaluation, I would imagine sometimes too. I wonder if there's a push-pull between Bill O'Brien and Bill Belichick or anybody, Phil, when you look at, hey, they don't produce. Let's use the guys who produce. Tyquan doesn't produce, Devontae doesn't produce, and Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't produce. So sorry, boys. It's a fascinating conundrum.
it is a conundrum. And Tom, I think Bill Belichick's going to have to get to at some point soon here, if not already, the thing that we for a long time have given him credit for, which is, well, you know, he makes a mistake, he admits it, and he moves on. You know, nobody's more cold and calculating than Bill Belichick. If that situation comes up, nobody's going to be more willing to make the change that needs to be made. Let's see, right? I mean, to me, you know, I go back not that far. When you look at N'Keal Harry going into his second year in 2020, and by the end of 2019, Jacoby Myers, the undrafted rookie, is clearly playing better, but he can't get on the field in 2020 in year 2 because they want to play N'Keal Harry.
Right.
And they're very different players.
Right. People forget.
But money matters. Draft status matters. The saying in Foxborough has been for a long time, and I get it, to kind of motivate your players. Hey, it doesn't matter how you got here. It's what you do when you get here. But it hasn't always played out that way. If it does play out that way, Mike, there's no question Demario Douglas should be playing over Juju Smith-Schuster, and Jalen Reagor should continue to cut into Devontae Parker snaps.
That's what I was just going to go off, Phil. They just signed Jalen Reagor this morning to their active roster too. So there is a logjam at the position. You talk about Reagor, Parker, Bourne, Juju, Douglas, and even, you know, Kayshon Boutte, if he can get on the field. I feel like there's going to be something going on there sometime soon. I don't know whether it's a Foxborough flu or what have you, but he's been banged up. And so, but no, there's a logjam at the position, and you're right. You would hope that what we saw last week, good offensive line, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, get in a groove, consistency with Mac Jones, even the tight ends. Look, this is what works. We just won a football game. Let's go do it again with the same exact, not the same exact, routine, but something similar, and let's roll with it. But I mean, you're right. You talk about the extension for Parker, Juju's contract. Like, do they force them onto the field? They shouldn't be. And I mean, you talk about the Patriots, and you come in here and you gotta, like you say, you earn your way and you're the best player, but sometimes the money gets in the way. So, I mean, hopefully they don't look at that way, but sometimes it just gets in the way.
But it is funny too, because it is money, but it is also your evaluation. And
right,
certainly Devontae Parker, by now you look at it and go, or you should be able to. And I know that he got a raise, but it wasn't exorbitant, even though it was billed as such. But you got to be able to look at him and go, he's Philip Dorsett with a bigger body. He is, you know, same general phylum and status, just can't do things that you thought he was going to be able to. But you haven't seen enough from Juju. You can't say, and I know everybody listening to this is going, I have. You haven't. Or they haven't. They need to know more to satisfy whether or not it was a waste, especially when they're getting pilloried for letting Jacoby Myers go and having Juju come in. It's almost like, here, watch, I'll show you. Hold my beer.
Who are you taking off the field, though, would be my question, because it has been interesting. I did a little digging in terms of some of the stats. Douglas versus Juju, because I heard you last night, Tom, on the game plan, and said, listen, they're on the road. You might want that veteran presence on the field as opposed to Demario Douglas. He's made some rookie mistakes this year, there's no doubt. But I think you could argue win on the field.
That wasn't a terrible assertion. On the road, hot, crowd noise.
No, but I would just say don't do it at the expense of Demario Douglas snaps. If you want Juju Smith-Schuster out there, figure out a way to get somebody else off the field, because I'm looking at it now in terms of yards per route run. This is according to Pro Football Focus. Demario Douglas is 20th in the NFL in terms of qualifying receivers, 2.24 yards per route run. Juju Smith-Schuster is 96th at 0.89. So Demario Douglas about 150% better in that particular metric. He's about 150% better in this particular metric, which is yards after catch per reception. When Juju Smith-Schuster was signed, it was, well, this guy's going to give you a little yak. He's going to give you a little explosion in the way that Jacoby Myers couldn't. He's 95th in the league in yards after catch per reception, whereas Demario Douglas is 11th, 6.1 yards after the catch per reception. Don't take him off the field. If you want to give Kendrick Bourne a blow, if you want to give Jalen Reagor, Devontae Parker a blow, and play Juju Smith-Schuster outside, he played outside a little bit in Kansas City. Do that. Don't take your most explosive and dynamic receiver off the field.
That was my rebuttal there, Phil, was put Juju on the outside, because, you know, Parker's not a separator and Juju hasn't been a separator either. So play Juju at the X. We saw it when we were down there in training camp all this summer. They rotated guys inside, outside. We saw Douglas on the outside sometimes. Like, don't be afraid to mix and match, because that's sort of been O'Brien's thing, right? Is, find guys and find your matchups and, let it work out that way. So you're right. Don't take Douglas off the field. I don't know how you can take that guy off the field anymore. Yeah, he's made some mistakes. He is a rookie, but he's your best separator. He is your best wide receiver right now, in my opinion, your best playmaker. Find ways to get him the football, and you can cook.
It's so crazy, because those things that we'd all love to see as media people who follow this team, or as fans, everybody wants to be entertained, and you want Bill O'Brien to start to dig into a bag and start saying, all right, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Watch this play. We're going to start to involve this. And they basically are a baby that is standing upright right now, like this, teetering, and you would say, run! You can't run yet. They just had their first soup to nuts good game. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Mass. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling helpline ma.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. So my question, and I actually talked to Mac Jones briefly in the locker room on Wednesday about momentum, and he just was very hopeful, but pleased, but hopeful they could keep it going. And I said to him, there's a baseball saying that momentum only carries to the next day's starting pitcher, and he nodded like he understood that. It's only going to last, this momentum, until the first drive Sunday. Then all the shit that happened last week is gone. If you start plowing downfield and end with a touchdown, then the momentum carries to an even higher pitch, because it's not found money. You can do it. But if you go into the tank on the first drive, it's 3 and out, and Barringer kicks it into the cheerleaders, you're back where you were to a degree. So how much of a role, Mike Kadlick, do you think momentum can play, and how hard will it be to capture it on the road in Miami?
Well, I think you talk about it sort of stopping at that first drive, and I would agree. But it can help you prep all week, because, we were down there yesterday, guys, and there is like a little bit more of a buzz, a little bit more of a juice. Like, players come to the podium, they're smiling more. They don't have to just sit there and say, well, yeah, we did this, and that wrong. We got to build on this because, we messed this up. Like, no, there was no caveats to that game. They won a football game. They played well. Now they build on that. So I think as much as it doesn't help maybe the game in Miami, it helps their prep, and it helps them realize this is how we know how to win now. This is how we have to do it. And so to not look too far ahead, if you win this Miami game, you have 2 more winnable games with the Commanders and Giants coming up. So yeah, it's hard, and it's one game at a time, but it can help them, and it's probably helping them right now, because there is definitely a buzz in that building.
Phil, I got to ask you this. If a Patriots observer could order up 2 guys to be having limited availability on Sunday, I would absolutely put Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert at the top of the list. And people would underrate Mostert, I think, and forget about him to a degree, perhaps. But he's a home run hitter. We saw it the last time they played. He'll get the edge. He'll get 9 on you. He'll get 11 on you. He'll take a screen and go 18. He's a pain in the ass. And we already know what Tyreek Hill is. How do you think the Miami injuries could impact Sunday's game?
Could change everything, especially when you talk about Tyreek Hill. Because even if you want to bump your plan for Tyreek Hill over to Jalen Waddle, well, now the rest of your defense's jobs just got a lot easier too, because instead of dealing with Waddle, say in the slot, maybe you're dealing with Braxton Berrios, who did hurt the Patriots, no doubt, earlier this season, and he's not a bad player.
Yeah, but he's no
also
Jalen Waddle.
He's not Jalen Waddle, and he just doesn't
Right.
have that kind of speed that threatens and changes everything you do defensively. So if Tyreek Hill's not available, do they scrap that Big 12 defense 3 safety game plan that they showed back in week 2? Do they try to cook up what the Eagles had cooked up for the Dolphins just last week, which was essentially a lot of cover 2, and they just relied on their front to do their work, and they are one of the best defensive lines in football. There's no doubt in Philly, but they were able to stop the run, get after the passer with essentially 4 guys. Now, Mike, I know the Patriots believe very strongly in their defensive front, even with Matt Judon out. They love their group. If Christian Barmore's out there and healthy, Dietrich-wise, they've got a lot of love for Devon Godchaux. I know, Tom, we have criticized Devon Godchaux at times here on this podcast, but he's coming
one of
off
the lowest ranked defensive tackles in the league, according to that's PFF.
He had one of his best games, I thought, as a Patriot a week ago, getting after the quarterback. He wasn't just stopping the run.
It was so funny when they said his name. I'm like, I don't know if I've heard his name announced all year. And he had
what did Bill call him when they signed him? One of the best defensive tackles in the league, right?
He's one of the best defensive tackles in the league.
Don't forget to push your mic down.
If they can somehow replicate what Philly did, I think it's going to be because these guys that you mentioned are limited. If you can dial down the talent on Miami's side, the Patriots can look a little bit more like the Eagles on the defensive side of things, and maybe that ends up being a plan for a lot of production on that side of the ball.
And the defensive line you mentioned in the defensive front, even they didn't miss a beat with Uche out. Like Anthony Jennings came in, and he wasn't a pure pass rusher like Uche, but he's played well. And
Tavai's playing out of his mind. Anthony Jennings has been fun. The linebacker group as a whole, I think, has been really good. Faster, right, Phil? Faster.
And maybe they get Josh Uche back this week. He was out of practice and is limited still, but if they can get him back, and again, you don't have to blitz, maybe send extra defenders. That means more guys in coverage, more eyes on Waddle or whatever receiving weapons they have out there. I think that's your best bet, is to try to dominate the line of scrimmage with 4 guys. And you might be able to do that because this Miami team, it's not just banged up at the skill positions, it's banged up on the offensive line too.
Unbelievable.
And their answer,
you go, Mike.
No, their answer to Tyreek Hill prior to week 2 was, having Jonathan Jones on him and sort of having it go that way. And then Jones was out in week 2. So they went to that, like you mentioned, Phil, that Big 12 3 high look. Now they have Jones back. If Hill's out, put Jones on Waddle, and then everything goes back to the way you had it. So again, we'll see what happens, but that feels like sort of their recipe here, is that mixed in with the defensive front.
Even though the Patriots were nearing a point where they needed to be taken out behind the barn and given the old Yeller treatment a couple weeks ago, I wonder if you guys saw that movie. All right. I'll Google it. They are now in a position where they can actually go to 3-1 in the division. So while they're still lagging behind, that divisional record, if they can continue to roll off wins and Buffalo comes back to the pack a little bit, and I think we can all agree that the 30th strongest schedule in the NFL has benefited Miami so far, and the Patriots have played the hardest schedule in the NFL. New England can be in a position where if this turns into a rock fight in the AFC East and it's a 10-7, 11-6 kind of division, they could be hanging around. Are all these games, though, must win? Like this one, for instance, because you've already gotten the losses to a point where you're in trouble. So you have to try and start looking at tiebreakers already and say, we got to get even with these guys somehow in record and then beat them on the tiebreak.
It feels like it. It feels like a must win. I feel like the Cowboys game and the Saints game and the Raiders games were must wins, and they lost them all. And at that point it was like, okay, Buffalo, it's over. You're sitting at 1-5 and now all of a sudden you win that game. It's like, well, now you have to win this game because you didn't win the other games. And if you hit this one, like I mentioned earlier, you go into that run of winnable games. So if you want to compete this year, you can get to 5-5. The path is there. And we're talking about the path in week 8, but it's real. And you talk about the tiebreakers in the AFC East. It does. It feels like another must win here. It does.
Phil, shouldn't there only be one must win legally? so that if you lose it, there's no more must wins? Because it's like,
yeah, I think legally, you only are allowed to start labeling games must wins when you are mathematically eliminated from postseason contention if you lose. Right. So that's like, if we're talking about like the must win police coming after us, we're probably due to do a little time.
I'm going to get a citation at least.
At least a citation. I look at it as a must win for this reason as well. I think the door's open. I think it's a winnable game. You know, I think the opportunity is there for you to win this game. Will I be picking them, Tom? I don't know if I'm going to be picking them. But with all the injuries that they have and the way the Patriots performed on Sunday, and if they can get their offensive line and that group back to where they want it to be for a second consecutive week, there's a path to them winning this game.
You know who's going to be the hero or GOAT on Sunday?
Chad Ryland.
Tiny-headed Chad Ryland. Tiny-headed Chad. As a fellow tiny head who got a ridiculously aggressive haircut, look at this. I did not ask the guy to do that. We're going to sign off. Let's get the out of here.
That is nice. I like that. What are you talking about?
You're kidding
aggressive. Me. You look fine.
He went bananas.
You look fast.
Well, it looked like a baby bird. All right, folks. Enjoy.